My guest today in a wintry London is an increasingly powerful voice in the global energy business. José Sergio Gabrielli is the boss of Petrobrass, which is at the heart of the Brazilian government's efforts to turn the country into an economic superpower. But with commodity prices plummeting and growth stalling, are Brazil's big ambitions about to be thwarted? José Sergio Gabrielli, welcome to HardTalk.
Thank you very much for your invitation.
A year ago, it is fair to say that life was good for you and Petrobrass and for Brazil. But it's not so good now, is it?
I will not agree that it's not so good. I think it's better than most of the other countries. We have very good possibility for continue our growth because we have diversified our exports, because we have a domestic market that's very important, because we have very large investment plans.
Well, you're clearly an optimist, but you forgot to mention there that the oil price has gone down from, what, over $140 a barrel to $40 or so a barrel. That has a massive effect on your business model.
Yes, but I don't say that it's going to have an impact on our investment, because the $144 price of oil was one day, and nobody's going to project a plan that rests for 12 years thinking on price of one day. You have to project your own expectation of the minimum price that your projects can go.
But demand is fundamental to your business, and obviously demand for commodities is fundamental to Brazil. And the fact is, the IMF tells us that global growth is slowing down very rapidly. The world is barely growing now economically, and that has huge implications for you.
Yes, but remember that everybody continues to run your own car. You have to go by bus, you go by plane, you transport a cargo.
But demand you would accept demand is going to drop.
Yes, but not as big as the other type of goods for oil and natural gas and energy. The elasticity, the income elasticity of those projects is smaller than the other.
Well, that may
products.
be, but look at Brazil, for example. The Economist Intelligence Unit, they're pretty respectable. Their latest forecast for Brazil's annual growth is down from, I think, last year's 5.3% to around 1.6% next year.
Yes.
That will have an impact.
Yes and no, because, for example, the transportation system is going to reduce some of the cargo, but still the demand is going to, our expectations, the demand is going to grow more than 1%. That's enough for us.
You are an influential voice in the energy business. What do you see happening to the price of oil then? If you say, you know, there is a fundamental sort of basic demand that sits out there, come what may, what's going to happen to the price of oil?
It was interesting. In Davos, we have an energy summit with all the oil industry and the energy industry. And the idea that we have is that we have a trend. We cannot say about the numbers, but the trend is oil production declines naturally if you don't invest. The way that you can get more oil is investing more. If you have a reduction in investment, even if the demand falls, the supply would fall, which means that if we don't have investment, we are going to have a scarcity of oil in the future. And as such, our expectation is that the price is going to be in the lower range that's now, but it's going to increase.
So it's going to stay around the 40s?
I don't want to commit myself with a number, because the volatility is going to be very high in the next few months. And it's going to be, if you take, for example, the future price today it's $41 per Brent for WTI, but for June it's 58. I don't know what's going to happen.
I must say, you sit here and you look very relaxed. But I just wonder whether actually you can afford to be so relaxed. Your stock price, for example, is down, what, a third or more in the last year. And you look at huge international oil corporates like Shell and BP. They are reining in spending. They're reining in investment. They've decided that some of the plans they had are not economic. You have taken a very different position, and I wonder if you are worried about your position.
I don't think that I have a different view of that.
Well, you're indulging in the most massive expansion in spending and indeed borrowing. 55% increase in capital spending over the next 5 years.
If you look at the plan, investment plan of the big oil companies, they continue to be the same as last year. Not the smaller company, but the big ones are continuing to invest in the same way that they invested last year.
50, more than half again increase.
Let me explain why we increase our investment. We have the largest discoveries worldwide of oil in the pre-salt area. We discover...
That's the offshore.
Yes,
off the south
offshore.
of Brazil, offshore.
Yes,
you have
offshore.
these vast potential reserves.
Yes, we discover on volumes recoverable oil, not reserve yet, but recoverable oil between 9.5 and 14 billion barrels that are sitting there waiting for being explored and developed.
They're sitting there under 7,000 feet
we are
of
producing
sea
today.
and rock, and it's going to cost you a fortune to get it
No,
out.
we have 23% of the total worldwide offshore production. We have the technology. We have the capacity to produce. We are producing in the campus basin at 4,000 meters of water depth plus.
Well, let me put this to you. Adriano Pires, who's the director of Brazil's Center for Infrastructure, he calls your present plan a work of fiction.
He is a politician. He's not a technical analyst. He's a opposition of the government.
Well, he looks across the world. He sees that borrowing is becoming more expensive. Credit lines are becoming more difficult. And you are indulging in the most massive round of new borrowing. And he says it won't work.
Our stockholders didn't respond like that. What happened is after we announced our plan, our stocks went up by 10% the next day. We are fully financed for 2009, and we are going to be financed by 2010
but
as soon as
because,
possible.
if I may say so, that's because your hugest share owner, the biggest stake in your company, is held by the Brazilian government. You are, in effect, a state-owned company. And the Brazilian government, for political reasons, wants to keep you growing.
Do you know our free float is greater than much of the other companies? The Brazilian government owns only 37% of our stocks.
That's by far the biggest holding, yes?
Yes, but 63% is free floating.
The chairman of your board is one of President Lula's most senior ministers.
Oh, for sure, and we have five members of the government and there are 9 members of our board.
So when you talk about politics and things being political, your strategic decision to go for this massive increase in spending to exploit these new reserves is political.
That also is political, but it's not only political, it has a very clear economic sense because we can explore our production, we can develop our production, and for sure, every company, big company, is envy to go and be together with us in the pre-salt.
Well, if I may say so, it only makes sense according to, and again, I just look at the experts, Nelson Rodrigues de Matos, who's at the Bank of Brazil, energy analyst, he says it only makes sense and is truly dependent, he says, your entire plan on oil prices rising, on credit markets improving, and equipment and service prices remaining stable. Well, those are huge assumptions to make right now.
Our expectation for prices that are under stress condition is $37 per dollar in 2009, 37, 40 in 2010, and 45 on the perpetuity forever from 1911 on, which is almost impossible to happen.
Would you accept the figures, though? And again, I'm looking at the experts. They say that it is, in the end, going to cost between $500 billion and $1 trillion US for you to fully exploit the reserves you've just told me about.
It's not true. Our expectation is that we have the numbers. We are investing $112 billion from now to 2020. And our production is going to be 1.8 million barrels a day from the pre-salt. And those numbers, I don't know where they come from.
Well, they come from, for example, Lisa Vardusi at a company called EIG, who watches your business very closely. And she's run the numbers, and she says it is going to cost an awful lot, almost unimaginable amounts of money.
I'm telling you the right number. We are investing, we have the numbers, we have the projects, we have all the information. It's $111 billion from our side, which is around 60% of the total investment.
You are borrowing from the Development Bank, which is obviously a government bank. You are, obviously, as you've already said to me, you've got huge political influence from the chairman of your board and the many politicians who oversee what you do. Is this really about President Lula's determination to turn Petrobrass into a huge global energy player?
Oh, it's very good if you have the same idea, because Petrobrass' strategic plan is to become one of the 5 largest energy companies in the world by 2020.
Some would say that's hubris.
No.
Where you are now is a long way from that.
No, we are in the 8th position. To be from the 8th to the 5th, it's not a big movement.
Well, it may be at a time like this where actual borrowing, expansion, is an extraordinarily difficult thing to keep going.
For sure, but what I'm saying is that we have straightened up all the financing conditions that we need for 2009. We have most of our needs for 2010 already under control. And it's not only from the government, the Brazilian government. The Brazilian Development Bank is giving us $12.5 billion